Sandra Bauer. I came to Eugene out of high school to go to college, and it was during the, after a couple of years, it was during the height of the Vietnam War and the war resistors, and it created a counterculture of people who were very political and opposing the Vietnam War. And we supported local self-reliance, cottage industry, but there wasn't any marketplaces for that. You know, it was all mainstream culture, and we found each other, a lot of us found each other in some of the large marches against the war, and I started the first boutique and hip store in Eugene. It was called J.P. Toodle Clem and Feather Company. And I met Bill and Cynthia Wooten when they came into my store, and they had just started the Odyssey Coffee House, or they were in the process of starting the Odyssey Coffee House, and we became very fast friends, and Cynthia and I remain fast friends to this day. And a lot of things came out of those associations that we made with each other, and Bill was quite a bit older than Cynthia and I and the rest of us. He was, you know, he was a philosopher of the highest sort. He read a lot of Nietzsche, and he was able to express in a politically consistent way the underpinnings of what it took to create a counterculture. And the fair is one of the things that came out of that, along with a free university and bring recycling, you know, just lots of stuff. We because there was no place. People stayed home, dropped out, became potters, weavers, and they needed a place to sell their stuff. And there was Saturday market started then, and growers market, and lots of different organizations. And then we did the fair. We started the fair. There was a whole group of us that worked together to start the first fairs, and they were pretty basic because none of us really knew what we were doing. You know, we made it up, and you know, in the process of working together with people, you make really deep friendships. I've been coming to the fair ever since. Every single year. I was part of Old Main Camp. I lived with Cynthia and Bill for several years, and but I came out to Main Camp because I loved being out here, and other people stayed in town and did town stuff, and we directed all the work projects out here. So there was a whole group of us that's called Old Main Camp, and we basically ran the fair for 20 years. You know, I think it's the friendships and the fun and the quirkiness and the family and the community that makes me come back every year. There were certainly some big events that could have killed the fair off very quickly, and it took a lot of work to turn that around. Initially, when we made it out to Veneta and we started and we created the site out here, the neighbors weren't thrilled with having a bunch of counterculture people show up in the middle of them that were very politically very different from them. And they organized to try to stop us, went to the county commissioners. They tried to create all kinds of barriers to us for putting on the fair. They required a bond. No other outdoor assembly in Oregon had to have a bond. And Jill, who was our attorney and a really good friend, she and I were roommates for several years as well before she got married. And she was, she was a very mighty little person. She wasn't very big, but she, I think we had to have a, oh, that came later. She decided that they were putting, it was illegal for them to put those kind of barriers to us expressing our right to assemble. So she decided to take the county to court. And So I worked with Jill in putting the court case together and appearing in court and testifying and getting the information that we needed. And Jill was, she was very relentless. She was amazing. And she won. And we won the $25,000, and that was a large chunk of the down payment that we needed to finally buy the property, because we had a lot of rules before when we were renting, and then after we owned the property, it was, you know, there was still outdoor assembly ordinance, a lot of, you know, legal stuff you had to do, but we were much more in control of the space. We could develop it, we could leave things more permanently, and it took a huge leap forward when that happened. And one of the other ways that we got enough money for the down payment is Ron Chase put together a charter membership program, and people paid $100, which in those days was a lot of money, and that was part of the down payment. And then we did a couple of balloon payments, and I think we were paid off in, like, I don't know, I can't remember, maybe 10 years. It was a short amount of time. So that was huge, pivotal time, and allowed us to really invest. And, you know, and you see the art that's around today, and the big systems and more property. The Country Fair is a huge property owner out here now, and it's, you know, it's a real force for good in the Veneta Amara community. And instead of them hating us, we spent a lot of time working with the neighbors too, though. We visited them, we gave them passes, we made them love it. I mean, they, and you know, most of them, you know, started to look forward. They'd start calling us up wanting to know where their passes were, instead of, you know, showing up at the community club testifying against us. But we paid a lot of attention. We used to stick a person in all along the highway so they wouldn't park in their driveways, you know, all those things that irritate people. So in the beginning, I mean, the neighbors, you know, they had good reasons for some of the things we were feeling, because, you know, we really didn't know what the heck we were doing. And, you know, people were parking in their driveways. They were crossing their property to get into here. And, you know, people don't like that. And I don't blame them for not liking that. So, but what we did is we went to visit them one-on-one, asked them what their issues were, and then we dealt with their issues. And so over time, they felt that we had become a better neighbor. And we had become a better neighbor. And I think, and today, there's all those, you know, there's all the camps all around. Those people, this is a huge economic driver now for the community. Huge. I mean, it was starting to get that way, you know, and then when we were dealing with the unpleasant parts of stuff, then they were free to like it. I think the fair, you know, I love a lot of the things that, I think the fair has made a huge difference in the area. In the beginning, we were all very political, and, you know, we started the first, this was the first major event that was almost completely recycled. None of these things were mainstream. And we started, you know, it was the little things that were important. Instead of the signs saying Craftsman's parking lot, it was Craftspeople's parking lot. We went into a lot of the history of the fair. Women have been in charge, and that, I think, helps to create maybe more, there's a little, you know, we paid attention to having it safe and comfortable and healthy, and there wasn't, there was a lot of female energy out here. You know, and I think that is, you know, I think that has been important, and right now it's very multi-generational. Our kids have grown up here and they're just as devoted to it as we are, and we've made it family friendly. I think it's very, very important that it continues to be family friendly. and that people who don't already, we need to reach people who are not already committed. It cannot be a party just for us. It needs to be a party for people who are not familiar with some of the things that drove us to start the fair. And I think it needs to remain politically active, and I think that it needs to mean something, and it needs to remain progressive, and I don't think it behooves us to shy away from the politics of things. And I see sometimes people stepping back from wanting to engage politically because they don't want to offend certain aspects of the community, and I think that's wrong. I think that's one of the reasons that this has been so strong, is that we've had a consistent philosophy, and I think that absolutely needs to continue. It is not just a party in the woods. Those of us who were here in the beginning made very conscious decisions. We set up every system out here, however small it started. It's certainly people have built on from them, but we set up every system and we made the decisions. We decided that it was going to be a community event. It was going to be a cross between an arts and crafts festival and a community event. That's why we set up the rules in such a way that we could create community and that people would have ownership stake, because people need to own it, in order to feel like they have a stake in it. And for example, one of the ways we did that was with the booths. We gave people always first chance to reclaim their booth, and if they didn't reclaim it by a certain date, then we opened it up to others. So then a person could come back year after year without rejurying, and then they owned that space. They made it into a home, and that was their that was their home away from home. And they started to develop it, and each square inch had a function in their little home areas. And so they started to, we created that ownership, and then that helped us create the community. And then people felt that they had a say in things, and that even each of the different, like recycling and security, traffic, we would have a coordinator, and then they would have a lot of autonomy in setting up their own crews and their own subfamilies in these different in the different crews, and that also creates community and it creates ownership. And I think if we hadn't made those decisions early on, that community was very important and needed to be supported, that I think this may or may not be here today, because I actually think that the community aspect of it is the thing that's drawn people back for 45 years. Without having a stake in it, an ownership, an ability to be heard, and an ability to innovate, lots of room to innovate, because people just take off and do these incredible things that we would have never thought of. And so giving them the freedom to do that was huge, and I'm amazed at what's out here.